Good afternoon. My name is Valissa Turner-Howard, and I'm the Vice President of Diversity and Inclusion at the Cleveland Metropolitan Bar Association. Thank you for joining the Bar Association's D&I Committee for our May Lunch and Learn. Over the next bar year, we will feature at least one Lunch and Learn a month on a diversity, inclusion, or equity topic. Today, we will discuss building and maintaining robust programs in times of uncertainty. As you may know, during a time of crisis, everyone is focused on what has been determined to be essential, and what some might call frills or extras go by the wayside. Since mid-March, many of us have been social distancing and working from home. We've been super focused on getting the work done and ensuring that we continue to add value to our firms and legal departments. How many of you or how many of us have thought about your firm or legal department's D&I program? How many have experienced a rollback in D&I programs because they are not deemed essential? As noted in a recent Harvard Business Review article, diversity work is nice, but not essential. That same article made the point that we hope to drive home today. We are in two crises right now, an economic crisis and a people crisis, and organizations that acknowledge only one risk exasperating the other. Diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts can be a powerful solution to both challenges, but the nature of diversity work must evolve to meet that change. I dropped a link to that article in the chat if you'd like to read it. Our speakers today are two attorneys many of you may know. I was ecstatic when Marquettes Robinson and Stanley Ball volunteered to present a lunch and learn on a diversity, equity, and inclusion topic. They're both great lawyers and well-versed in DEI work in the legal profession. I won't read their bios, but instead will allow them to introduce themselves as we begin. Today, we will conduct the lunch and learn in a question and answer or discuss format. So I'll ask a question and then Marqui and Stan will discuss it or answer said question. If you have a question, please type in the Q&A box and I will try to incorporate into the discussion or we'll ask the questions at the end of the program. The following are a few of the topics we will likely cover, so maybe your question will be answered in these topics. The first is talking about why we're not here to make the case for D&I. Another topic will be around understanding what's important to in-house counsel regarding your product, understanding what's important to in-house counsel regarding D&I specifically. How does a successful D&I strategy evolve for law firms, and what are some strategies to consider? Strategies that need to be retired, that we no longer should probably be using. And then also just talking about how Greater Cleveland can become a market leader in the DE&I space. So let's begin. The title of the Lunch and Learn suggests that we are discussing building and maintaining a D&I program, as opposed to whether a D&I program is needed. I think we are all in agreement that D&I in the legal profession is necessary, right? But just in case there's someone on the call that needs a little reminder, Marqui and Stan, can you give us a quick recap on the case for D&I in the legal profession, and in that also give a quick introduction?
Marqui?
Okay, Stan, I see how we're gonna do this. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Marquettes Robinson. I know a lot of people. I saw the list of attendees, and I'm glad that you're here. I appreciate the support. A little bit about me. What do I want to share? Grew up in Cleveland and Glenville neighborhood. Came back after I graduated law school in 2001 and have been practicing law in Cleveland since 2001. Last year, I transitioned to an in-house role after being a complex commercial litigator for the first 18 years of my career, and I'm attempting to settle into that. That's about enough on the introduction, I think. Why we aren't here to make the case for diversity and inclusion. I'm tired of trying to convince people of the worth of women and attorneys of color. if you don't have it by now, if you haven't worked shoulder to shoulder with an extraordinarily talented woman or Black attorney or Asian or Latino attorney, I can't help you. I am no longer expending breath on that. That's why I'm not here to try to convince you about the case for D&I. I think our talents and our efforts make the case itself if people are willing to listen and learn to hear the case. We're here to talk strategy. I think we spent the past 20 years talking about why it's important, and I would rather spend the next 20 years of my career talking about how to implement what is important. So I'll let Stan introduce himself.
Thanks. I'll start my comments just with an expression of gratitude. Thank you to the Cleveland Metropolitan Bar Association for allowing us to participate and speak on our experiences. But more specifically, I want to thank Valissa. I mean, if you don't know her, she has a long history and track record of investing in D&I here locally in Northeast Ohio, whether it's in her current role as the Chief Diversity Officer for the County Inspector General, or in previous roles for Thompson Hine or Cleveland Marshall. She has really invested in this, so I appreciate the opportunity to share some of my insights. With respect to an introduction, I practiced at 2M Law 100 law firms, both here in Northeast Ohio as well as in Chicago, Illinois, where I recently left. I am now litigation counsel for Eaton in Beechwood, Ohio. I'm responsible for managing various forms of litigation and disputes all across the Americas, as well as managing all of our outside counsel, irrespective of their practice group. So I deal with M&A lawyers, I deal with IP lawyers, whatever it is. It's my obligation to focus on our selection, our management, and our review of all of the firms across the globe. And the last thing that I do, just so you have a kind of a understanding of what I do on a day-to-day basis, is I focus on internally on our theft and fraud recoveries to make sure that we are good stewards of our finances within our organization. To answer your question with all of that, you know, lawyers got to give a whole bunch of disclaimers and statements before we get to the substance, because I don't want to duck your question, Valissa, but to answer it as to, you know, the history, I think it's important that all of us, if we're serious about being in the D&I space, start with the history of our profession in this country, and to divorce discriminatory practices from the history of our profession would be a lie. There's no way to get around it. It's clear that minorities and women were precluded for many decades from attending law schools, joining bar associations, sitting for bar exams, being appointed to leadership positions in private institutions and in public institutions. And so what the last generation has taught us, sitting on the shoulders of the Norman S. Miners, the Louis Stokes, the Stanley Tollivers, the Stephanie Tubbs Jones, is that we have a movement. It's bigger than us, bigger than one person. We're in the midst of a movement. It's not over just because we had the first Black president. We're still in the midst of it. And so the work that all of us are doing, and I appreciate everyone who's on the line, the work that we're all doing is a continuation of that movement. And so that's why this work is so important, to not just have our presence in these rooms, but have our perspectives heard and valued in our respective organizations and communities. That's why we're doing this.
Great, thank you. Did you have something else, Marqui?
Sure, I'll add on that. We're here to talk about strategy because I think it's important to have concrete methods and tactics to root through some of the mythology that the legal profession is wrapped in. So there's mythology around the entire pipeline being based on merit. And that mythology permeates into decisions once young lawyers join firms about the quality of their work and their merit, how they should be promoted and what opportunities they should be given. We need to work on and dispel the idea that, you know, a little bit of sensitivity training, a little bit of self-awareness on your unconscious biases will resolve this problem. We need strategies that address the systemic issues that diverse attorneys face in law firms, because while some things are personality driven, when those personalities are given positions of power, that becomes a systemic issue. And we need tools to dismantle those systems. I think we're here to talk about strategy because, especially in this day and age where, to your point, people are cutting back on things that are considered bonus, that are considered non-essential, we have to talk about how our efforts at promoting diversity could suffer under some guise of even-handed, objective economic trimmings, and how that's problematic, especially for diverse attorneys. So I'm looking forward to this talk, and I just wanted to give people a preview of why we think it's important to talk about this strategy. So I'll let you.
So let's jump into, so law firm D&I strategy and programming has been ongoing for, as you mentioned, Marqui, almost 2 decades. But the rate of change has been very incremental, very, very slow. And you take 2 steps forward, 1 step back. What are some strategies law firms and possibly legal departments might consider to evolve and make larger strides? And either of you can start.
Marqui, I know keep doing it, so.
Ask the question again?
Yeah, what are some strategies?
What are some strategies law firms and legal departments might consider to evolve and make larger strides? Sort of an incremental change up to now. What can they do differently to level up and maybe make some larger strides going forward? Okay.
So the first thing we have to do, and I assume I'm talking to an audience here that wants to hear about these things, and so you can take the treats with the medicine, and this is going to be a dose of medicine. We have only seen incremental change because the strategies we are currently using do not work. That's why. They're not working. They're not successful. You might get 1 or 2 diverse candidates in the door, 1 or 2 who are able to survive the young associate years, the junior partner years, generate the book of business. But true success would be demonstrable and widespread and sustainable. It would self-replicate, and we're not seeing that. And so the first thing we have to do to figure out what strategies to implement to push diversity efforts is to examine the strategies we're already using and be very, very critical of them, and be willing to discard what makes us comfortable. Because what makes us comfortable is guarding the status quo, and that status quo is choking out opportunities for young diverse attorneys. So that would be my first point. Examine what you're already doing, acknowledge its benefits, acknowledge the limitations, and then be bold enough to discard what's not working for us. So Stan, we're gonna do a 1-to-1. I'm gonna toss it to you, you can toss it back to me.
All right, let's do it. I'll build on that and go a little bit deeper. I'm a numbers guy, so metrics to me are critically important. And I think as Marqui was talking about examining what you're doing, a part of that is looking at what are my metrics? When I look at underrepresented minorities and women and the years that they're spending, their tenure at my firm, how does that compare to folks in the majority? How does that compare to the benchmark, which are historically been heterosexual, straight white males in my firm? What are those numbers? When I look at the years that they're there, when I look at their compensation, when I look at how many years it takes for them to grow from an associate to partner, and then from non-equity partner to equity partner, how long does that take? What am I missing? When I look at my turnover for diverse talent and they leave, and let's be frank with each other, when people leave firms, they're very polite on their exit interviews, very polite, very political on their exit interviews. But how often does someone in the HR team or an attorney who's on the D&I team pick up the phone and call one of those diverse attorneys, maybe not right away, but a year or 2 later, and say, hey, what could we have done better to keep you? What was missing in our culture that we could have better serviced you? and listen to that feedback. One of the things that attorneys do wonderfully well, we're great spin artists, and we always have an excuse or a reason for groups of attorneys leaving. Oh, they wanted to go in-house. They wanted a lifestyle change. How many we've all heard that in the water cooler? Oh, they wanted to go to a smaller place, or hey, they just couldn't cut it. But we have to examine what our culture is inside our firm. And I want to take a minute. I'm going to toss it back to you, Marqui, in a second here, but I want to take a minute and point out a wonderful book that Adrienne Thompson gave me recently. It's called The Next IQ. It's by Erin Reeves. It's out of Chicago, doing phenomenal work. And there's an excerpt in her book where she talks about this concept of seeds and soil. And so if you think about D&I, what she's explaining is that your seeds, your talent, your diverse talent, those are your seeds. And you can go out and get the best seeds you could ever possibly think of, the most beautiful seeds, most wonderful seeds you could ever find. But if your soil isn't right, if your internal culture isn't right, that seed is not going to grow. And let's be honest that there are certain law firms, there are certain departments, there are certain clusters of attorneys where your soil is like concrete. And it doesn't matter if you get the best lawyer from the best school who's very talented to be in that department or in that law firm, it's not going to grow. So much to Marqui's point, the first thing to do is assess your internal culture and ask the question and give an honest answer is, if I go out and get top level seeds, top level talent, do I have the capacity? Do I have the people here who are willing? Do I have the culture here that will cultivate that seed so it can grow exponentially? Toss it back to you, Marqui.
All right, caught it. So what else can we do for to reconsider in kind of a radical way the strategies that firms are using and how it impacts your culture? So I was probably not even in my second year when I realized that the true currency of law firms, the true power dynamic resided in not the billable hour, but the origination credit. And different firms have different versions of that thing, whether it's a management credit, a bringing it in credit, but there is power, there's money, which money has its own power, but there's also weight and political power tied to the concept of an origination credit. Who's bringing in the clients? Who's managing those relationships? Who's increasing the revenue from those clients? Mm-hmm. And because that's a source of power, in order to improve diversity, inclusion, equity, retention, long-term growth of numbers of attorneys of color, you have to look at how that power is being credited, shared, distributed, who's given access to it. So I would say you need to look at how your diverse attorneys are being marketed to your clients. Are they invited to the pitches, but then not front and center, helping discuss strategy as the matter evolves? What can you do to strengthen those client relationships? I'll actually ask Stan to discuss the importance of relationships when I toss it back to him. But are we putting diverse attorneys in positions where they have as much access to that power, that unit, that origination credit as their peers? And then I think the origination credit, the billing credit structure, to the extent your firm uses one, has to be reevaluated. It's a weird catch-22 for a lot of partners to bring strong attorneys onto their cases and introduce them to the clients, because then you're creating so much value and you're doing exactly what you want to do. You're training this younger attorney, but then you have to worry about that younger attorney being absorbed by that client, which I think is a good thing. If that's a concern for you, reevaluate how much value you get out of people you've homegrown going in-house. But that's a concern for a lot of people. And then there's a flip concern of that individual having such a strong connection with the client that they can leave with the work. And that stands in the way of progress. If you have created an environment if your soil is such that people want to stay, you don't have to worry about somebody snatching your work and leaving. So those things kind of play hand in hand. If you're too concerned about somebody leaving, it's because it's, to me, an acknowledgement that the opportunities you're presenting aren't big enough, including pay. If somebody can be poached because there's a better payment opportunity somewhere, that should tell you that you're not assigning enough value to that attorney in your firm. That's one. And then if you're concerned about that attorney leaving, there's something in your culture that makes it impractical or undesirable or a negative environment for them to want to stay in. Maybe they don't see leadership opportunities. Maybe they don't see enough buy-in from their peers towards their success and towards the success of the firm. But you have to check and make sure the culture is right so that the people want to stay. Stan, long-term relationship.
All right.
You're the relationship.
Yeah, long-term
guy.
relationship. Yeah, no, it's a great point, and I'm going to take it a couple ways. One of the first things that I'll say that I think is important for people to understand is that the D&I space is a great opportunity to get creative and develop relationships that are both organic and that are extremely intentional. So here's some examples. A lot of firms, oftentimes, their one chance to recruit, or the chance that they allow themselves to recruit students straight out of law school, is going through the OCI process. And it's kind of a happenstance. You know, I'm going to drive to Notre Dame, I'm going to interview some students, I'm going to send some folks to Case or Cleveland Marshall, and I'll see 15, 20 students there. I would argue to you that there's a better way to do it, and that you can catch some of those students a little bit quicker. My argument, or the question I have, is when is the last time that your firm has gone to HBCUs where there are full crops of students, who are very smart, very intelligent, who are diverse by nature of them being at an HBCU? When's the last time that your firm has tried to, or your firm or your law department tried to establish a relationship with any of the members of the Divine Nine? If you don't know what the Divine Nine is, it's a good opportunity for you to use the Googles. And try to establish pipelines with HBCUs, with members of the Divine Nine, to find more talent. Because one of the things that we hear is that we just can't find anyone. And the question I throw back is, well, tell me about your pipelines. Where are your sources of finding people? How are you pitching that your firm, that Greater Cleveland is a great place to work? And I'm going to come back to us looking at this from a market approach, not an individual approach. I talked a little bit about organic development of relationships, and I want to shout out to someone who recently left the Greater Cleveland area, Brandon Cox, and it's a tremendous loss to the area, it really is, but he is a great example of using organic relationships to develop pipelines for students. And one of the things that he was doing, because he felt empowered by his firm and leadership in his firm, was to go back to his alma mater and coach and give his time to make that firm available for those students to understand what life is like as an attorney. And so when that firm came to campus, or where there was an opportunity to work there, and some of the members who know Brandon, who went to that firm, are on this line, it was no question. It was no question. Because of that investment, that organic relationship building that was going on in the community, it was a no-brainer to go to that firm, because it was clear that that firm had a serious investment in the community. The last thing I'll touch on about organic growth of relationships, and I'll pass it back to Valissa or Marqui to kind of clean up what I said, is that people will ask me, how do I get clients? How do I get clients? How do I demonstrate that I can be a good partner, I can manage things? And what I say to folks is a couple of things. One, if you are a younger attorney, get to know the people who are young in this city with you well. Get to know them very well, because there's a big chance that even though they may be an associate at firm A, 10, 15 years from now, they may be in-house somewhere, they may be at a firm that you're trying to get to, so you're gonna wanna know who the people are in your community. The other thing that I would say is that a lot of times people are chasing GCs, and there's nothing wrong with that. There's absolutely nothing wrong. I'm a big fan of GCs. I like my job. But there are a whole host of other folks in those law teams who you need to know. And the division of responsibilities, it may not be just the GC who has the opportunity to select counsel. So while you are running past some vice president or running past someone like me who doesn't have a really sexy title, you're missing your opportunity. You're missing your opportunity for a relationship building at that level that could really grow. And I've seen it happen way too many times that the folks who you have access to readily, you walk right by them, and that's not a smart play. I know I said it was the last thing I was going to say on this point, but I always hit you like a Baptist preacher. I got one more for you, and it's a responsibility of, and it's one more thing, because I can't let in-house counsel off the hook. It's something that we're responsible for, and that is really analyzing who we deem as the relationship partner. As Marqui mentioned, the currency in this game is billing credit. It is origination credit. That is your power in those firms. And in-house counsel, if we want to talk about, if our stated values are about I&D and really playing big in that space, we really have to look at, okay, I know we like this firm, they've done great work for us, but sometimes I've got to step in and intercede and say, you know what, this person is going to get origination credit for this matter. I know you've been a relationship partner for 15, 20 years. I understand that. But if my stated values are I&D and increasing the level of power and progress in that space, I have an obligation at times to step in and say, you're okay. Your career is going to be okay. Your book of business is going to be okay. I've got to step in and help this person.
Yeah, Stan, I think that's absolutely critical. We've been kind of talking primarily to the law firms, but I know there are general counsel on this phone and other individuals who are in-house counsel, and we play a critical role in, pick your favorite D&I term, leveling the playing field, creating opportunities, et cetera, et cetera. We hold an enormous amount of power. We have both carrot and stick. A lot of local, national businesses are actively on a monthly basis monitoring the amount of work that's being billed by women and minorities to their matters. They're actively monitoring who's receiving credit. They're actively monitoring whether the people involved in the pitch are actually the people who are doing the work. They're monitoring new metrics, veteran status, LGBTQ status, language diversity. We are measuring these things because you can't improve something that you don't know what it is. You can't improve numbers when you're blind to the numbers. So we're measuring those things, and it's important for us to know that our power in the measurement and in handing out the work is to say, this individual has been consistently performing on these matters so well that I now call him or her directly. To your point, Stan, they should receive the billing credit. And because we have that power, it might make it a little bit easier at the law firm level to manage some of those politics about whether or not the pie is getting bigger or somebody is taking away a slice of somebody else's pie, right? If there's always concern about this person is going to eat my portion, then you're not going to create the type of environment where you see diverse attorneys coming in and the work multiplying from that talent being available to outside counsel. If you're so worried about somebody eating your pie. Now, I like to eat. And let me tell you, there are always ways to create more pie. You just have to be willing to invest in those ways to create more pie. And you're hearing, I think from in-house counsel, that it's possible to get a bigger portion of something by simply being willing to share and to say, hey, my partner does IP work and is minority. Can I introduce you, even though I only do M&A, to my partner over here? I don't have to get the credit for that. They are so amazing, you'll be wild, you'll want to give them the credit, but the whole firm is eating. Now we're all eating, and that's a good thing.
Can I
also,
get in here?
Yeah.
Get in here.
Yeah.
We had a couple of folks, and I think you've answered some of their questions. Anthony Andrix was sort of just making the comment that wondering, and also Marissa Darden had the same kind of question around origination credit. What are some ways that clients can be allies to ensure that diverse attorneys in the firm get credit for the matters on which they're working? I think, Marqui, you sort of spoke to that point. You've got to call whoever directly and say, I want this person to work on it. I want them to get the credit. They've been doing the work. You have to, from in-house, you've got to press for that. Also, Ed Blakemore, just wanted to remind folks that in-house clients now can see how much outside counsel is billing by categories like women and people of color. And an increasing number of women and people of color are going in-house and are becoming decision makers on the assignment of work of outside counsel. So that's another key thing here. And then just one more question from Ronald Johnson at KeyBank. There's a tremendous amount of emphasis on certain metrics for success, origination credit, billable hour, et cetera. But when you look at the rising success of some lawyers you know, what other elements have you seen? Does sponsorship come into play? So if you can sort of weave that into more of your comments around strategies to evolve and level up.
Yeah, can I jump in? I just want to follow up on a couple of those things. One, I wholeheartedly agree that it's on in-house counsel to step in to intercede on the origination issue. We've got the power to do it. We've got the buying power, so we got to do it. That's on us. I think the second thing that is a shared responsibility is that just as law firms have put out and lauded their stated values as it pertains to I&D, so have in-house law firms. In-house law departments. And so there is a strategic partnership that needs to take place on that front. And what do I mean by that? If we're just talking about dollars, we're still leaving value on the table. There's a lot more value on the table. So let me break it down what I mean by that. We can look at strategic partnerships or panel firms as purely transactional. We can do that. And we give you a matter, we pay you, everybody's happy, keep moving. I would argue that there's another level to this that is not being utilized as it should. And that is to call on for law firms to call on your law departments, your clients who say they care about this issue and get some action behind the stated values. What does that look like? That looks like secondment. That looks like, hey, I'm trying to find some diverse talent. Will you help me on the recruiting front? If I bring some diverse talent that I've brought into my firm, can I bring them to your company to do a mock pitch? Can you talk to them about what that means? There's a lot of different ways that we can go about this. I don't want to monopolize the time on that issue, but the point I'm trying to make here is that when it comes to strategic partnerships or panel firms that really care about this issue, you have an opportunity to be creative and bring them in on the recruiting, the training, and the retention piece, because by demonstrating to young talent, whether it be straight out of law school or people that you've brought in from other law firms, to show them that there are clients that you already work with who care about this issue, that want diverse talent on those matters, it makes a big deal. And it goes back to that creating that culture piece.
So I can talk to, I believe the question was about mentoring relationships.
Yep.
So you definitely want genuine relationships. That's key, but you have to be prepared for the possibility that your most genuine relationships, one, won't be in your firm or in your law department. They could be from outside the organization. And two, they won't necessarily be people who look like you. One of the most influential mentors in my life was a white woman. And a lot of my development is owed to her giving me opportunities that I otherwise would not have. There are two individuals on this call who I just want to shout out, who reached out to me when I first came back to Cleveland, and have always made themselves available for questions, conversations, and mentoring. Absolute powerhouses, two of the most genuine people you will ever meet. And if you don't know these people, and sorry when I say your names that everybody starts to blow you up and send you LinkedIn requests, you are really missing out on the opportunity for a genuine connection with people who want to see you succeed. And that's Ron Johnson and Ed Blakemore. And Ed has shepherded and overseen more young attorneys. He keeps track of us. He's done efforts to get us all in the same room and across different categories to just create opportunities for building those genuine relationships. And if you want to have a conversation on how it can be done, Ed and Ron are two hugely successful in their careers. So there's practical advice there, but also just genuinely nice people. And, you know, when I was outside counsel, KeyBank was a client. I tried to get some stuff from Rockwell, but there wasn't ever an appropriate alignment. That wasn't, you know, for all of that, that wasn't the value of those relationships. It was the mentoring. So you have to be open to mentoring from wherever. I've never worked in a situation where, as an attorney, I had Black partners directly in my office. When I worked at Voorhees, the Black partners were in Cleveland until Teresa Beasley joined, and then she wasn't in my team. She wasn't on my team. But I had people like Ed, Ron, who I could rely on. The mentorship is also important, and this is going to be the medicine part of that. In these types of economic times where we're trying to figure out how to make $1 out of 15 cents, how to stretch resources, when they're having conversations about who to cut, if you don't have somebody sitting at the table that says, whoa, that person is key to my operation and organization. My clients love that young woman. My clients love that guy. What do you mean? You haven't seen the value. What? You need somebody who's invested in your success and who will champion you. And when we can't establish relationships with people who are in power, it hurts us when it comes time to make decisions about who to cut, who can be let go, because there's nobody there to tell them just how talented and brilliant and wonderful we are. That's one of the reasons why we want to see more people who look like us holding those positions. But until that comes, you have to build bridges with people who don't look like us, because that's just a key element of survival.
Marqui, I can't let this part go because allyship is so critical. It is so critical. And let's just talk about for a moment, you know, what does that mean? What does that look like? First and foremost, we have to acknowledge that there are folks that we work with who are part of the same bar that we are a part of, who are very intelligent folks in many respects, who don't believe that IND is an issue. Shouldn't be a shocker to anyone that they don't believe it, or they believe that that's not my issue, that's your issue. That's underrepresented minorities, y'all deal with it. Women, you figure it out. Members of the LGBTQ community, you figure it out. That's on you. I'm over here making my money, okay? So let's deal with that. There's another part of that is about allyship and folks who recognize the issue, who want to help, who want to be a part of the part of the change, but also understand that within allyship, it's not a monolith, it's a spectrum. And you have folks that you work with who say, yeah, I see it. You know, I've read a Brian Stevenson book once or twice. Okay. And then there are other people who are just as passionate about this issue, who don't look like Marqui and I, who will get right on the front lines with you. And as I mentioned in my opening comments about assessing your culture, it's just as you look at who are my diverse talent, look at who is really talented at being an ally. Who really cares about this? Who really gets this issue, or who wants to get this issue a little bit more? If you are looking at your firm, looking at your roster of attorneys, and you say, okay, there's a track record with this partner. He's got folks who he's mentored, who he's helped, he's gone the extra mile with. That's someone who I want to tap and bring into my D&I committee. I want to empower that person to help me create pipelines. We have to promote allies, promote allyship, respect them, because right now, unfortunately, we just don't have the critical mass of underrepresented minorities and women at the top levels, whether it be the C-suite in an organization or the executive level within law firms. And so it's incredibly important that we recognize allies at the highest level and use them and work with them and celebrate them as we try to make progress in this space. So, sorry, Valissa, I know Valissa, you're about to make a question, but I had to jump in on that.
But this is like the meat of what this panel discussion is about, right? What are strategies that we need to start employing so that we can make larger strides? I just wanted to get in a few questions that have come in. One from Sanford Watson is, how do we get more in-house counsel to send the message about origination credit and about the potential to make a bigger pie, or to make the pie bigger? How do the lawyers at the firms encourage and help in-house counsel get this message across to decision makers and folks who, you know, decide how things will work at a firm?
So I think you have the.
Yeah.
Oh, go. No, go, you want to go first? Go first.
No, I will. Here's what I'll say to Sanford. Thank you. It's a great question, Sanford. I really enjoy talking to Sanford. He always makes me think about something a little bit more critically. And I think the answer to that question, it goes back to, let's talk about the relationship that we have. I mentioned to you earlier, you can frame it as transactional, or it can be a real partnership. And I want you to think about, you know, what are the most successful relationships that you have, whether they be intimate, friendships, or professional. Those relationships are built on a conversation, real sharing, good, bad, or indifferent. And what I have found in managing our outside counsel across the globe is that law firms and our respective relationship partners are quick to call me about rate increases, quick to call me about adjustments to bills. You know what they're not quick to call me about? With their D&I strategy, the issues that they're having with it. Talking about, hey, we need a little bit more origination credit. I need you to help this person get it together. This is how my firm works internally. These are the politics that I'm dealing with inside my firm. I don't get those calls. I don't get them. I have no problem calling some of my relationship partners and say, hey, what's going on? I see these numbers are off. But in terms of the depth of conversation that is happening, it's not there yet. And so, Sanford, to your question, and to everyone on the line, both in-house and the law firms, I would encourage you to increase the depth of communication and frame it as, hey, client, you said this matters to you. Let's talk about it. Let's really partner on this issue. This is what I need from you. This is what I need from your peers in order to make this thing work. I think it's a communication issue that can be resolved. And that's the good part. It can be resolved. Marqui?
But then, once you start that communication, you have to be amenable to implementing the suggestions. So we have this thing at Eaton called the Diversity Action Program, DAP, where we work very closely over the course of about a year with select outside counsel to improve their D&I numbers, because we're tracking, we have metrics. And one of the firms that we were working with this year, we sat and we actually reorganized the way their cases in a particular area were assigned to increase and promote diversity. And that probably shut off some opportunities that had been there for other partners to make way for younger attorneys of color and women to have those opportunities. And so then once we had access to them, the managing partner for that relationship had to sit and listen to me in particular, say things like, this is nice. I'm glad this young woman is now on this case, but she's real quiet when we're on the phone, and I don't like that. I don't like it. I don't like it because she has things to say. I don't like it because I know she's doing the work, because I see the bills, but there's something happening either with me or at your firm that has this woman who's intricately involved in every aspect of my cases quiet. And I need you to figure out why she doesn't talk on the phone. And then fix it. And so he went back and was like, okay, let me figure it out. And what did we come up with? Well, Marqui, I think it would help if, we could help you establish a better relationship with her. Bet. I'll take her to lunch. What else? Well, I'm having a hard time trying to figure out how to create the opportunity so that she's comfortable. Bet. Let's get her on the phone. We got her on the phone. We got 2 of the other partners that were working on her matters with her and this guy. And I said, listen, I feel like this young woman should be saying more when we're on the phone. I know her role and she should be doing more. And if you're concerned about whether she'll be able to field the questions as quickly as they're coming, that's something we can practice. You will start by assigning her the topics that she'll cover. So she'll be thoroughly versed. And then everything else that might be out of left field, the partners on the call can handle. But we will always start understanding that this young woman will be covering the discovery strategy, the interviews, and the budget. And then anything else that she's not comfortable fielding will come from other places. Guess what? After a month, she doesn't have a problem talking on the phone anymore. She knows that she has a space and that her voice is important, but it took effort and it took humility on my part. Am I intimidating her? It took humility on the relationship partner's part. Well, we gave her the opportunity. I mean, I can't make her talk. It took humility on the part of the senior attorneys who were working those matters to say, it would have taken me 10 minutes to answer that question, but she'll have to research it. I'll have to edit. I'll have to revise her draft response and blah, blah. So somebody had to present those opportunities for you. It takes a boldness. And it takes all of us recognizing that we have to invest in those that are coming behind us. And if you're not willing to make that investment, if you're not willing to make the soil good for that seed, then you will lose every time.
So I want to get some more. These are some really good questions, and they're not necessarily on topic, but they're good. So
are the answers any good?
Right.
Amazing answers.
You're biased.
So we have a question from Sonali Wilson. State entities have to go through the Attorney General's office, who actually approves and hires outside counsel. In-house counsel has to be more insistent with the AG that the firm assign a diverse team. The AG is not going to do this. The more it is heard, the more the firms will comply. Oh, that was a comment. Excuse me. Sorry.
I agree. I agree. That's on us.
Let's see here. We also had a question from Carter Strang at Tucker Ellis. The Tucker Ellis Pipeline Program. It involves a partnership with Tucker Ellis and Cleveland Early College High School, through which we provide 3 teams of 3 R's volunteers to coach its mock trial team, hire Stokes scholars, CECHS grads, and serve on its advisory committee. I created the program in 2006, and Brandon Cox was a leader in it. I have always felt pipeline partnerships are a great way to make our profession more diverse and inclusive. What can we do to get more firms to establish similar partnerships? And that goes hand in hand with a question from Marcia Moreno, where she wanted some best practices around building the pipeline.
I'll go first.
Yeah, awesome.
I don't want anybody on this phone call to take what I'm about to say as an insult. All right? I see the value of what's being done in high school programs. I see how important it is for those high schoolers to see people who look like us and to be encouraged to pursue legal careers. But that's a 12-year investment. We can't wait that long. Where's the pipeline development for the 2nd and 3rd years who are sitting in their offices down the hall? Where's the monitoring of how they're faring in your environment? And you're a pipeline, yes, that person should be in the pipeline to sit on management committees. That person should be in the pipeline to lead pitch efforts. That person should be in the pipeline for leadership at your organization. the pipeline is not just somewhere where we're doing good and it feels good, but there isn't really a challenge. High schoolers are challenging. Trust me, I know that. But that's not the challenge facing the legal community. Nobody is saying we're losing people at the high school level. We have people falling out at 3rd, 4th, and 5th years because something else is happening inside the law firms. Let's mind that pipeline. It doesn't make sense to get them in from high school and then leave them to fend for themselves in a hostile environment once they're in the firms. So the pipeline, what can we do at the firms? We've talked about establishing good relationships. That's on the diverse attorney, but that's also on people in power to extend themselves to those diverse attorneys. What can we do for that pipeline? We've talked about the origination and the billing credit. What can we do for that pipeline? How about we not be fiscally conservative, right? We talked about these fees and the business being tight. How about we not be fiscally conservative with our diverse attorneys with their business development ideas and plans? A Black attorney like me, I needed access to my alumni network. I needed access to the Minority Bar Association locally. I need access to the Minority Bar Association nationally. And I needed access to the National Association of Minority and Women-Owned Law Firms. While my peer down the hall might have only needed access to their alumni association and the local bar. Now isn't the time to say, well, you can only choose 2 bars. You have to understand it's not about providing equal resources. It's about providing equal opportunities. And for the opportunities to be equal, you might have to spend a little bit more on your diverse attorneys. That's how you mine that pipeline. How do you mine the pipeline inside the firm? You sit down and you actually hear how people are faring managing their lives and their workloads. You sit down and you manage, are people being given opportunities? We let personality dictate so much how assignments are given out in the 1st through 4th years that people are scrambling to become some partner's favorite when that partner's work could be more equitably distributed so that you have a bigger pool of well-trained attorneys. You have a deeper connection with your clients because they've met multiple touch points within your firm. They're impressed by the multiple touch points and how well prepared and intelligent they are. But instead, we're allowing personality. Oh, you know, Bob is quirky. Oh, you know, Keisha, she only likes to work with certain people. It's not smart financially, and it's not a smart way to develop your pipeline. And so, yes, it's important, but we have to protect the people we already have in the door. And that's by creating opportunities. So I hope I didn't offend too many people.
Well, they can't. You can't hear them anyway because they've had to write their comments.
Type it. I'm offended. I really didn't want to offend you.
No, it's you know, one of the things that Marqui and I, we may differ slightly on this point. I do think that the long-term investment is critically important. I think that inspiring people in high school, showing them a path, and creating those relationships is the utmost of importance. One of the things that we talk about, or you hear minorities say frequently, is I want to see someone that looks like me in those roles. And my argument to my generation is I don't want to see you, I want to know you. I want to have a relationship with you. I want to know those students. So I want to be able me personally, I want to be able to follow a young man who goes from Yin Academy to Cleveland State or Case or Baldwin Wallace College, through whatever law school they choose to go through in Ohio, through their legal career here. And I want to celebrate them when they become an equity partner or part of the executive committee in a law firm here in Northeast Ohio. I'm tired of the brain drain. So I do think it's important to think long-term. But I want to just add just a couple more points because I think there's a lot of growth here that can be had within firms to create pipelines. And the first thing that I'll say is I would encourage all firms, everyone in leadership, to push down ownership of this issue throughout the entire team. What does that look like? Oftentimes we'll have the people who are making critical decisions on D&I issues are folks who are partners, who are part of some formal D&I committee that are, 40 years, 50 years old, and the likelihood that they will know someone in their 20s or in their 30s to be able to come into the law firm is pretty slim. That's not who they hang out with. That's not who they know. People who can pick up the phone and tell you, hey, I've got my buddy, I know I'm at firm A, B, and C, but across town at firm X, my buddy is looking to leave. I can make that introduction to you before this person even hits the market. But in order to get that type of information, in order to have that open line of communication, ownership of this issue has to be pushed down throughout your entire organization. And I've heard that there are firms in town that I know, I won't say any names, that have these types of referral programs where you actually get a monetary bonus for bringing in someone, not just a diverse talent, but any talent that the firm decides to hire. Empower your associates to look at this issue critically and say, hey, why not use this referral program to increase our diversity numbers, to bring in people you already have a pre-existing relationship with? I think that's important. And then the last thing that I'll say on this piece in terms of pipeline, and I'm gonna just call them out by name because I think they do wonderful work, is LCLD and MCCA. As Marqui talked about, sometimes you have to make that investment so younger attorneys and partners can build up their network of people both nationally and in their own community. And I think that LCLD and MCCA do a phenomenal job of having these conversations, of bringing people together, having meaningful relationships. I think CYO, charting your own course, I don't want to mess up the acronyms, there's a wonderful job of this as well. And so there's a lot of value that can be extracted from those types of organizations, especially because organizations like LCLD has a focus on having young attorneys, the Pathfinder program, meet up with the older attorneys who are more seasoned with their fellows, and then they incorporate law school students through their mentorship program as well. So you're getting the full spectrum of underrepresented minorities and women in one organization. So I think that's important.
Mm-hmm. So I want to move on to another question that correlates to this, which is the legal profession has been in the D&I game for a while with little movement. What are some of the strategies that are past their prime and should be retired? And I think you've mentioned a couple, but maybe mention a few more that maybe it's time for those to be retired as we move on to a more evolved strategy.
Can I jump in on this one? Because I have to sit through these pitches. Please stop with the glossy magazines and sheets of who your diverse talent. Please stop. It's not impactful. It doesn't help. It doesn't progress the conversation. When I have to explain this because it's a misconception about in-house life. If you believe or have been told that in-house lawyers happen to just show up at 9 a.m. and leave around 4:30, and that's that, that's not how it works. That's not how it works. And in fact, you know, if Joe Rogers, who I really enjoy and appreciate his support, if he would have told me what I was in for, I may have stayed in Chicago, to be honest with you. But we work. And to get an hour of our time, whether that's in a formal pitch or we're going to join you for a dinner, use that time very wisely to have meaningful conversations. And what I would encourage all of you to think about is when you want to invite someone, a potential client, to a sporting event or something, think about that. Are you saying I need the spectacle of an event for 3 hours because I don't have anything meaningful to talk to you about for 3 hours? Is that what we're saying? Because I should be able to have a really impactful conversation with you about what is happening in the industry, what's happening with your firm, what we can do better to partner on these issues. So I do think the style of pitching that we have seen in the past of, let me just come in, show you a couple of documents, tell you where everybody went to law school, and boast up how important and smart we are. That's not going to cut it. The other thing, and I don't want to monopolize time, I'll pass it back to Marqui. The other thing that I think is important for us to address is this statement that I have heard time to my face, time and time again, is that the second that you request more diverse talent, it's automatically met with a question or a statement about, well, I don't want to sacrifice quality.
Ooh-wee. Y'all put
statement,
on your seatbelts because Stan is about to lay it bare.
that statement, the statement has got to go. It's got to go. It's just remove it. It's not appropriate. It's not professional. It's got to go. And here's why. I'm going to lay out a couple of reasons. One, a statement about quality, if that statement comes from, hey, I've had a number of diverse talent come through the ranks of my law firm and they've all left in short order, there's one thing that's constant, that's your law firm and your culture. So unless you fully analyze the culture of your firm or the groups that are getting rid of diverse talent, I have questions about how you're quantifying quality. The other thing I'll talk about, just because I see it every day, is when you're assessing the quality of a candidate or an attorney, I got a question. You got to talk to me a little bit more about what you mean. Because as a buyer of legal services, I would argue that 10 to 15% of the attorneys that we deal with are not great. There's a large swath in the middle, probably about 75, 80% that are okay. They do some things well, some things they need to work. And there's about 10 to 15% of attorneys that are 100% just exceptional lawyers on all metrics. And I doubt that any firm in the country has all 10 to 15% of those high quality lawyers. The reality is you probably got a couple, but the majority of your lawyers are somewhere in the middle. And so when we talk about quality, I've got to bifurcate what you're talking about. I've got to look at from a technical perspective, and then I've got to talk about the character of the people who you're looking at. So let's spend a moment there, and I'll get done preaching in a second here. From a technical perspective, what matters, what's a quality attorney, is someone who can effectively communicate, both in writing and orally, who can deliver a concise recommendation that's backed up by some type of law or some strategy, someone who can develop a strategy and execute it, something that matters to me a lot, someone who can commit to a budget and execute that budget, don't go over my budget. Those are technical skills. I can work with technical skills. I can develop those. I think we can, everybody in this line, you can partner with someone and develop those technical skills. When we're talking about assessing quality of potential candidates and folks within our firm, the bigger ticket item is your character. That's the big ticket item. And I would argue that as we start to look at our candidates, as we look at our pools and we start to assess who should be running the firm, who should I peg as a part of my succession plan, the bigger story has to be a focus on the character. And what do I mean by that? As I've talked about, I can teach technical skills, but in character, I'm looking for four things. I'm looking for humility. I'm looking for someone who can express a sense of gratitude. I'm looking for an insatiable amount of curiosity. And last, but certainly not least, I think it's the most important thing, I need grit. I need someone who can hit an obstacle and go over it. And so I know we started this conversation about retiring this notion of that you're losing, that you might be sacrificing quality, but I put the question back on the person who's saying it and ask them, what are the attributes, what are the qualifications that you're talking about? How would you describe what a quality attorney is? And what I would encourage everyone to do on this line is to be honest about the technical thing that you're looking for, but also really look at the heart and the character of the people that you're bringing into your firm.
Marqui, do you want to follow up?
I can't. He said the whole thing. He put a bow on it.
Okay. So we'll move on to the next question. Are you sure?
I'm positive. He put a bow on that thing.
So let's talk about Cleveland in particular, right? What are your thoughts on how the Cleveland legal community in particular can make greater strides in the D&I space? And let me give you a few ticklers that come from some of our attendees. Are there cities or firms that you are aware of that have successful D&I strategies that we can use as a model in Cleveland? If so, please discuss the program, the results, and why you believe it'll work in Cleveland. That was from Marlon Primes, our immediate past president of the CMBA. Also, Rishik Sarkar asked, how can diverse attorneys better organize themselves to share information, opportunities, victories, etc.? So maybe weave that into your response around how Cleveland becomes a market leader in this space.
So I'll start by setting up Stan to comment on some of the highlights that we have going on in Cleveland that make it a prime opportunity. But I'm going to say something that's going to hopefully not ruffle too many feathers. People are in Cleveland because they love Cleveland or they love somebody in Cleveland. Cleveland isn't a destination for work like a New York or a DC. And so we have a community of attorneys who are invested either in the place or the people. And I don't think we're leveraging that enough. I don't think we're appropriately appreciative of how much the people who are in Cleveland want to be here, and how if we provided opportunities, it would allow them to stay and flourish here. I came back to Cleveland because my mama's here. I had opportunities everywhere, but my mom's in Cleveland. And so I'm here and I've established my career here. Thankfully, I've had opportunities to continue to further that. But if the people in Cleveland aren't necessarily looking for an out. They're already invested because it's not a Chicago, it's not a New York, it's not a DC. So Cleveland already has something in its favor in terms of retention. And it's an emotional connection. I think we got to build on that. Stan?
Yeah, no, I agree. I shortchanged you on the intro on who I am. I'm really bad. I don't like talking about myself, especially on a personal level, but I feel like I'm kind of forced to share a little bit of this here so that you see a little bit of the authenticity in what I'm about to say. I agree with Marqui that people who are in Cleveland desire to be here. Where I disagree with Marqui, respectfully, and thankfully we're socially distanced so she can't pop me, is that I do believe that Cleveland is a destination. It is. And I'll share a little bit about my background. I am the son of a union electrician, part of the IBEW Local 38, who with his hands helped to build all of these great buildings around town, whether it be the Science Center, whether it be, it's always gonna be the Jacobs Field to me, it's always gonna be Gund. I was there on those places during opening day, and I'm also the son of a woman who taught in the Greater Cleveland School District, CMSD, let me keep it right, CMSD, for over 30 years, and I was a guidance counselor at many schools there. This city matters to me. It's in my DNA. And I don't care where I go, the success of this city matters, and not just to survive, but to thrive. And where I push back on Marqui and declaring Cleveland as a destination is because we have some heavy, heavy hitters from a legal perspective, not just today, but a history of heavy hitters right here in Cleveland. And I'm not shy about it at all. And we continue to have Fortune 500 companies as market leaders right here in our backyard. We've had a cost of living that is exceptional, especially for how hard we all work and the value that's provided by the corporations and the law firms in town. And more to the point, we've got some great educational institutions, whether it be Cleveland State, my alma mater, and Case Western Reserve. So I love you, Marqui, but I got to push back. This is my city. This is my home. And it doesn't matter where I'm going. It's a destination. So to answer the larger question a little better about, how do we attract people, I think we've got to tell that story. And I also think that on this front, on the I&D piece, our mentality has to change a little bit. And here's what I mean by that, is that we talk about the city of Cleveland being all in when there's a basketball involved, or when there's a football involved, I had to go ahead and take out the glasses, or when there's a baseball involved. But when it comes to really showcasing how important our legal community is, we put all the law firms and all the in-house lawyers off to their respective corners to try to figure this out by themselves. And they don't have to. Who says that on this issue, we can't treat this the same way that they do with open source software, where everybody comes in and adds a piece. Everybody shares their best practices. Everybody talks about, hey, this didn't work, this failed. Hey, tell me who are the real allies in your firm? Tell me who are the real players in an in-house position who aren't just talking about this issue, but they're actually doing the work. Let's have a conversation as a community about big ideas and the small steps that are necessary to materialize and manifest those big ideas. That's what I'm talking about. And I want to be clear, because anytime that I speak on this issue, I always make sure that the audience I'm speaking to, you have every right to challenge me. And if I do something now or in the future that is inconsistent with what I've said, I expect you to call me and cuss me out. I really do. And on this front, I think it's important that in-house lawyers get down in the trenches with these law firms and the law schools to fix this issue, because we've tried for 20 years. We've done it for 20 years of expecting law firms to fix it in isolation, and guess what? It doesn't work. We've sent the letters. Y'all seen them? They've been publicized. We've sent those letters so many times. A letter isn't going to do it. What it's going to take here in Northeast Ohio to make this market really move, and for people outside of the greater Cleveland area to care about it just as much as we do, is it's going to take Marqui and I and all the law firm members and all the in-house counsel and all the people who are in higher education on this phone to lock arms, get down in this trench, and fix it together. That's what it's going to take.
Marqui?
I'm sorry, what were you saying, Valissa?
Was that a mic drop, or Stan? Or Marqui, can you say anything?
I think the challenge on a citywide, first of all, I don't disagree with Stan about Cleveland being a destination. I think we have different perspectives on it. So that's fine. I wasn't meaning to poo-poo on Cleveland. I love this place. I think the challenge, again, comes down to a size of the pie issue. I don't like using terms like crabs in a barrel because they're about to be cooked, and it makes sense to me that you try to do whatever you can to get out under that circumstance. You try to survive. But we're not about to be cooked. And so the pulling down of the people who are crawling over us or trying to get out does not make sense for this scenario. We're trying to make the pie bigger. And I think it will require innovation. I think it will require relinquishing some autonomy. I think it will require cooperation across organizations, across sectors, and across the city. You know, a couple years ago, I participated in these listening sessions about creating a citywide, through the CMBA, diversity effort, where we talked about all the firms and all the companies pitching in to hire a recruiter and bringing in candidates that multiple firms would interview to flood our market with talent. And it didn't go anywhere, right? When it came time to put literal money where literal mouth is, we couldn't get the buy-in. And so if we want to do something with all of these amazing foundational bricks, with our access to these Fortune 500 companies, these really tenacious local companies, amazing law schools, colleges, powerhouses in our legal community, if we do something with those bricks, maybe we have to acknowledge that we can't do it alone, and that it will require a joining of hands that says, I'll relinquish some of this power. I'll relinquish some of my authority to greater good. Because I believe that we can expand the prize, that we don't have to fight over the same crumbs. We can sit at the table. and eat just as good as everybody else, to get real colloquial. We could eat good if we all pulled up our own seats. We could do that. So what can we do as a community, right? No, we have to decide we're a community. What can we do as a community to push this issue that's individually important to us? One, our affinity bars have to start building deeper, more abiding relationships. It's all well and good for folks to get together, for the Latinos to get together, for the Asians to get together. But my God, if we all got on the same page and started to push the same agenda, if we all showed up for each other's events, if we all made the same noise, if we all said this is impacting us, if it wasn't about, oh, they hired a Black guy, oh, they hired an Asian woman, if it was somebody in our community, somebody that's been supporting our efforts, got that position, it's a win for all of us. What could we do? And what will that take? We have all of these individual fiefdoms, but if we join forces, if we said we have a singular goal of this, what are the tactics? How do we get that goal? And then we all work together towards that goal. We weren't counting, well, this inured to this person's benefit and that really helped them out, but we got left out. If we all join together, what could we really accomplish? What does that look like? I think we have to let go of some ego. We're all very used. I'm gonna say it anyways. The legal field is set up such that each of us is very well versed at being the only one in the room. I'm frankly tired of it, but there's a little bit of an ego that comes with being the one in the room. We gotta let that go. I wanna be in a room with all of y'all all the time and just bask in the intellect, bask in the new ideas, bask in our collective accomplishments. But we have to let go of that insecurity of being the only one or the smartest or the best or building bridges or losing power. We're more powerful together. So I think step one, we decide we want to be a community. And we have to act. Yeah, I'm done.
Yeah, I just want to add to that, and I may phrase it a little bit differently because I want to talk about value and the value that's left on the table when there's not a collective unit. About 15 years ago, Randy McShepard and Policy Bridge put out a report about Northeast Ohio, and the tagline was that basically that the most underutilized resource in Northeast Ohio are African American males. And the statement is that, or the argument is that by not incorporating them, bringing them in, giving them opportunities, having a seat at the table, not only are they disadvantaged and they don't have the opportunity to really grow to their full potential, the city of Cleveland and this area doesn't have the ability to grow to its full potential. Now let's take that argument and put it down to a micro level. You know, you've heard the cases being made for diversity, that it's great to have ideas, great to include people, make it feel warm and fuzzy. But the real argument, and again, I'll refer to Erin Reeves because she makes the point beautifully, is that the real argument is that you're losing value. You're not getting all the ideas in one place. So much to Marqui's point about bringing affinity groups together, having the dialogue, but also in addition to the affinity groups, the allies in the area, bringing them together, all of us together, to talk about this issue and work as a team. That's how you're going to get the most value. And I'll give you just a personal story, and then I'll pass the mic, is that I've seen a law firm spend a lot of money bringing all of its diverse talent to a city, getting the best hotel they can get, and it was all just, again, they're underrepresented minority attorneys, and they're female attorneys in one area. And the executive group showed up for dinner one night. And then the next day there was all the heavy lifting, all the discussions about how we can have a better strategy. And you know who wasn't there? The executive group, or individuals who are not a part of the underrepresented minority group, or female. And so it begs the question, why are you leaving so much value? How do you expect to get all the value out of these discussions, these meetings, when individuals in the minority are not meaningfully participating in these discussions? I know what it means to be a minority. I happen to be one. But I want to express to you and explain to you, educate you on what that means. And I want you to come back and say, okay, I get it. Now let's work together on making our culture the best it can be. So I know it's a long way of trying to articulate this, but I do think it's important that we think about this and articulate it in a way where we talk about value and seizing every last drop of the value.
I just wanted to sort of put a plug in for the CMBA has a subcommittee of the Diversity Committee, which is our Bars of Color Committee. And it's the representative, usually the president from each of the bars of color in the community. And Marlon Primes is the chair of that subcommittee. And we are working now to figure out what is our role? What should we be doing besides our social events, which we do every year and they're a lot of fun? What other things can we be doing? And so I appreciate that point, Marqui. I'm hoping that we can sort of expound upon that going forward. We are running, we have about 10 minutes left. I have a lot of questions in the queue. So
this is the short answer segment where we only get 1 minute to answer each question.
Questions through. And then the ones that we don't get to, I'm hoping Marqui and Stan will maybe have a written response that we can send out to the rest of the group after this is over. So let me get to Marcus Richardson.
Marcus, my name twin.
Firms are often reactive, responding to diversity and inclusion demands from clients. But how do we get them to be proactive? Does there always have to be a business case for diversity?
Ideally, the answer to that should be no. But money talks louder than just about everything. And we're in a money business. The business case is an important element. You want people to be good and inclusive, but if they can't see the financial benefit, then you're working against, right? You're walking into headwinds. How do we get people to see it in and of itself? We elevate people like Marcus Richardson to sit on those committees who don't have to see money immediately coming out of those efforts. Now, there's research that shows that diverse teams make more money and have better ideas and all that stuff, but you gotta actually build the team. But we need people like you to sit on those committees to say the money will come from doing the right thing. Let's do the right thing. Let's trust the process, the end result will.
Stan, do you have a response?
I agree, yeah. No, right now, the season that we're in, unfortunately, the business case has to be made. And I think the part that in-house counsel has to own is that we have to make it clear that I&D is not a bonus, it's a core requirement. So I can't disagree with Mark on this point.
Okay. Next question. Hello, panelists. I appreciate you both for speaking on this topic today. What is the civil lawyer's role in addressing the issues in the criminal justice system? I'm asking because I have not seen how Black attorneys and civil law firms have contributed to remedying the rampant issues in the criminal justice system. It appears to me that attorneys on the civil side are definitely eating on an individual basis, but what about the Black community that cultivated and contributed to the Black attorney's success?
So, this is how I would answer that question. I think a lot of things go into the very heavy issues we face as a community. It's been a crappy week, people. It's been a crappy week. It's been a week where we are continuously justifying our right to breathe and exist in white spaces. It's been a
Uh-oh. Is she frozen?
criminal justice system.
Okay.
Oh, sorry, you can't hear me?
We got you, you're back.
To demand that we do something specifically about the criminal justice system is to act like what we're seeing and witnessing isn't a symptom of the foundations of our country. Our input is needed on every level. I've never interacted directly with the criminal justice system, but when I know qualified individuals who are running for seats on our county bench, I support them with my time, my talent, and my treasure. And that will impact the criminal justice system. I spend my time, my talent, and my treasure on voter protection efforts because that impacts who's elected and how those people view policies that implement across criminal justice, across education, across socioeconomic development. I think to focus only on criminal justice when somebody might not have the talent for that would be a misuse of resources. My answer is, where you see injustice and it sticks in your craw and you can't get it out your head, do something about that. It will benefit us somehow as a community in the long run. That's my answer.
I agree, and you've given me the Herculean effort of trying to follow up on that. But I'm going to be respectful of time. One thing I'll say to you is that when talking about public policy, one thing that I would encourage every attorney of color to do, and every woman to do who's trying to make it here, who's at the beginning or middle of their career, is connect the generations. Connect. Talk to people who have been through this. I'll share a piece of my heartbeat, and that's this, is that coming into this city and trying to work on I&D initiatives, I'm not doing anything until I talk to and hear the lessons learned from Robin, from Adrian, from Sanford, from Ed Blake. I'm not moving until I understand what they've gone through and I've digested that information and I've made sure that how I'm looking at this issue is right. And then after that, I'm trying to connect not just people in my generation, but people beneath me, so that all the lessons, all that wisdom does not get lost. That's critically important. To speak directly to the public policy issue, I agree with Marqui that you got to vote, but I also agree that it's important for all of us to play big in spaces that are kind of indirectly related, but hold a lot of power. So what am I talking about? I'm talking about, we know that we are a city of boards. We're a city of foundations. And so when you get an opportunity, whether it be on a committee, a junior board, or on the board itself, you got to show up and show out, demonstrate a level of competency and make these issues known. Because the reality is that, let's say, for example, you're a lawyer at Jones Day, you sit on the board of directors for the Science Center or something, or the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, that there's a chance that the other people who comprise that board, that may be their only direct interaction with someone who is a quote unquote peer to talk about some of these social issues and public policy issues that are in our own backyard. We spend a lot of time looking at Washington, we spend a lot of time tweeting, but in terms of being out there, talking to people who don't necessarily look like us, getting outside of the echo chamber to make the case, that is critically important. And what I would say to everybody on this line, whether it's in your respective organization or board that you serve on or some community group that you're with, play big in those spaces, demonstrate your competency, and have real, honest dialogue about what we need to do in our backyard to push public policy in a direction that is equal for everyone.
Can I hijack? Because we are running low on time. I really, really feel like, to the extent it has found value in this, we really need to say, okay, so now what?
Yes.
Like, okay, great ideas. How can we put our hands to the plow? What can we do? What's next? What would people like to see? How can we start as a community implementing some of these ideas? What's next? Since I asked the question, I don't have to answer it. Dan or Valissa?
Well,
so now you're the host.
We're less than 60 seconds. We're less than 60 seconds. So what I would say is pick up the phone and call me. I'd love to sit down and talk to folks and get this done. Folks who I've already talked to, let's continue our conversations and get moving. I know I'm short on time, so I can't give you the full answer I'd like to, but let's keep the conversation going and we can talk about the action items.
And I would agree with Stan on that. Let's talk about it. And as the Vice President of Diversity and Inclusion for the CMBA, it is my role to try to help the greater Cleveland legal community be more diverse, more inclusive, more equitable. And so, you know, we're thinking about how do we do that? What does that look like? And I would love for anyone on the call, which many of you already are, to come and join us and talk about these issues, and let's take action. Let's figure out what are our action steps. Our bar season is ending in June. However, I'm open. I will meet you for lunch, for coffee, for whatever. If you have a thought, if you have an idea, let's make it happen. Let's get together and figure out how to keep, how to make Northeast Ohio a destination, as Marqui and Stan have differing ideas about that, for folks in the legal community who are diverse, who want a space where they will feel heard, they will feel that they've been seen, that they can bring their whole selves to work. You know, let's make Cleveland that place. And I would just do a final call to action. We're going to do these Lunch and Learns, or CLE, depending on if we have credit, once a month, even during the summer. So if you have an idea, if you have something you'd like to present, please contact me or Jessica Payne at the CMBA, and we can plug you in. Our next presenter in June is going to be Lola Garcia Prignitz, who's a partner at Ulmer & Byrne. We hope that you will join us for that that Lunch and Learn as well. I want to thank our presenters, Marquettes Robinson and Stanley Ball. You did an amazing job. They pulled this together in record time, and this was amazing. And I really thank you for your time and your talent, your experiences that you shared with us today. And also CMBA staff, Jessica Payne, our communications team, thank you for putting this together. Really appreciate it. Have a wonderful afternoon, and we'll see you next month.
Thanks everybody for tuning in.